Back up, girl. You don't belong in here. That's what the bailiff barked. Before his hand cracked across her cheek, files exploding across the courthouse steps like confetti. He slammed her to the wall, cuffs digging, officers laughing, phones out, calling her a stray and a rat. But through the pain, through the bruises, her eyes stayed locked on the courtroom doors. Because in less than 60 seconds, those same men would stand frozen, pale, speechless, as she walked past them, slipped on her robe, and took her seat on the bench. They slapped a black woman in court, not knowing she was the judge. "Stay right here. This one's gonna shake some badges loose." Her heel clicked once against the marble step. Early morning hush, sky still gray with sleep. As Judge Kesha Williams approached the courthouse in civilian clothes, case files tucked tight under one arm. No robe today, no escort, just work to do. 2 officers flanked the entrance like guard dogs. The taller one squinted, lip curling. "Street trash sneaking in again?" "We ain't running daycare." Kesha paused. Calm, professional. "I work here," she said evenly. "Step aside, please." They laughed. Sharp, ugly sound. "Oh yeah?" The shorter one sneered. "Show me some papers, ghetto wanderer." She opened her briefcase. Before she could answer, smack! A hand cracked against her cheek, snapping her head sideways. Case files burst like feathers, legal documents scattering across wet stone. Gasps rippled from the courtyard. A retired couple froze. A young clerk's jaw dropped. Kesha didn't move. She lifted her eyes, steady, cool, like steel pulled from fire. "Officer," she whispered, "you're making a mistake." That made him angrier. "Oh, I'm making mistakes now." He shoved her shoulder, pinning her against the courthouse wall. "You people always think you got rights." A short, heavy pause. Neighbors watching. Nobody stepping in. Her voice softened, almost pitying. "I asked you to step aside." The tall officer snorted, waving her off like smoke. "Back of the line." "Don't make me cuff you." He bent, gathering her scattered documents, and caught a glimpse. The state seal, judge certification, docket numbers. But instead of reading it, he crumpled them into his fist. Kesha held his stare. "You didn't check my ID?" she murmured. "Don't need to," he spat. "I know what you are." She breathed slow, controlled, training showing. Around them, murmurs grew. Why's he hitting a woman? Shouldn't he check something? She looks familiar. The officer leaned in, breath sour with arrogance. "You keep talking. I'm gonna show you what we do to loudmouths." He patted his cuffs. Metal clinked. For one long second, nothing moved. Then Kesha's lips twitched. A tiny smile. The kind people only see the moment they go too far. She glanced up toward the double doors. Mahogany, gold-plated trim, where her name gleamed on a plaque. Honored Kesha Williams. Presiding judge, the officer followed her eyes. His smirk died. His hand froze on his cuffs. The crowd went silent. Kesha's voice dropped to a whisper. Gentle. Dangerous. "Now, officer, would you like to read it properly?" His jaw locked. Color drained from his ears. Because suddenly, every witness watching knew the same truth. They just slapped the woman who holds their badges, their futures, and their fates, and the courtroom behind those doors had just become a battlefield they couldn't control. Not anymore. Why didn't they verify her ID? Before attacking? They were about to learn. Some mistakes cost careers, and others cost much more. The slap still echoed off the courthouse columns when 3 more officers strolled over, coffee cups steaming, grins already forming. "What's this?" one smirked. "Early morning entertainment?" Phones lifted. Recordings started. Kesha tried to gather her scattered papers, but the tall officer pushed her face first against the cold. Stone wall, cheek grinding into rough brick. "Quit resistin'," he hissed. "I'm not resisting," she answered softly. That calm tone only enraged him more. A second officer, mustache thick as rope, snapped handcuffs on her wrists, metal biting deep. "Judge has been on our backs lately," he whispered in her ear, low, hateful. "Time someone showed her how this place really works." The others laughed. Neighbors paused on the sidewalk, holding grocery bags, mouths tight, eyes full of fear. Nobody stepped in. Not one, because everyone knew who ran this courthouse. An officer leaned over her dropped briefcase, nudging papers with his boot. "These look important," he teased. She turned her head just enough to whisper, "You should read the names on those docket sheets." He snorted. "Lady, only name that matters is mine." Another chuckle. "Where's her leash?" Thought animals needed tags. Phones kept recording everything. Her cheek pressed harder into stone. She felt the grit, the vibration of footsteps behind her, the spinning humiliation. But her voice stayed smooth, almost surgical. "Gentlemen, are you aware where you're standing?" More laughter. "Yeah, outside court, where trash waits." A young clerk, trembling, tried to intervene. "Sir, maybe you should—" "Step back," the tall officer snapped, chest puffed. "Nothing to see here." Across the plaza, the bronze plaque glimmered in morning light. Presiding Court. Judge Kesha Williams, one of the rookies, squinted at it. Squinted at her, and his smile slowly wilted. Sarge, maybe we should check." "Shut it!" the tall one barked. "I know what I'm doing," but he didn't. Kesha exhaled. Steady, measured, memorizing badge numbers like beads on a rosary. She shifted just enough to speak. "Officer, I need you to understand something." "Oh, yeah? What's that?" Her eyes sharpened. Steel behind glass. "You're not just cuffing a woman." Silence. Phones recording. Coffee steaming. The whole courtyard holding breath. "You're cuffing the person who decides your discipline hearings." The laughter sputtered. The rookie swallowed hard. "Sir, seriously. Look at the door." Too late. Inside the courthouse, the bailiff tapped his clipboard, calling out, "Court is now in session. Presiding Judge Williams, you're needed on the bench." Every officer froze. Panic slid across the tall one's face like oil. Because suddenly they realized whose court they were standing outside of. And the cameras, still rolling, badges would burn for this. The stone wall was cold against Kesha's cheek, cuffs biting deeper, when a voice cut through the courthouse chatter. "Hey, officer, what exactly are you doing?" Heads turned. Down the steps marched Attorney Marshall Green. Silver hair slicked neat, briefcase polished like Sunday shoes. The kind of man judges trusted and juries believed. His jaw hung open, eyes wide with disbelief. He'd just seen the whole thing. He moved fast, hands raised. "Uncuff her," he demanded. "Now! That's Judge Williams." "Back up, counselor," the tall officer snapped, hand drifting to his holster. "This doesn't concern you." Marshall didn't blink. "I'm an officer of this court." "It concerns me plenty." A younger cop stepped forward. thumb flicking nervously across a yellow taser trigger. "Last warning, attorney," he barked. "Interfere, and you'll be next," people gasped. Someone whispered, "That's Marshall Green. He's been practicing 30 years." But nobody stepped closer. Marshall swallowed, eyes darting to the growing crowd. "Are you all just going to stand there?" he asked, voice cracking. "This is illegal restraint." An elderly woman shook her head, whispering, "Those boys retaliate. Folks around here learned the hard way." "Keep quiet." Kesha heard that. Her jaw tightened. Marshall took one more step, and the taser snapped to aim, laser dot dancing on his vest. "You take one more breath in this direction," the rookie hissed, "and we'll drop you." Drop. A lawyer, on courthouse steps. Phones kept recording, but hands trembled, because everyone understood the unspoken rule. Badges here didn't lose. Marshall backed off slowly, palms open. "This isn't over," he swore. "You're violating civil rights, due process, and save the lecture for court," the tall officer laughed. "Oh, wait." He leaned in close to Kesha's ear. "You won't be making it inside today." Something shifted in the crowd. A ripple, a murmur, whispers of, "They've done this before." Last month they cuffed a public defender. Complaints vanish. Fear spread like smoke. Marshall's face flushed red. Helplessness boiling into shame. He pointed at the plaque above the courthouse doors. "That name." "Right there." "Read it." The tall officer glanced, just long enough for confusion to bloom, then forced a smirk to mask it. "Could be Annie Williams," he muttered. But doubt had cracked his voice. Kesha's reply was quiet, measured, razor-sharp. "You're terrified someone might hold you accountable." He leaned back, jaw clenching. "Nobody holds us accountable." The rookie exhaled, shoulders sagging. People looked at each other like a curtain had been pulled back. Because now it was plain. Fear ran this building, and every witness on those steps had just watched law get twisted by the very hands sworn to protect. Phones kept recording, voices kept whispering, and somewhere inside the courthouse, a bailiff began calling roll. "Judge Williams, you're needed on the bench." The clock was ticking, for them. The cuffs clicked tighter, metal grinding into skin. Yet Judge Keisha Williams didn't flinch, didn't scream, didn't swing wild like they wanted. She went still, quiet as prayer, steady as courthouse marble. That calm bothered the officers more than any rage ever could. The tall one scoffed, pushing her forehead into the wall. "Don't got nothing to say now, huh?" She didn't answer. Instead, her eyes drifted, slow, intentional, to the badges lined across their chests. She read the numbers silently. 1, 2, 3. Each blink like a camera shutter. The rookie shifted, uneasy. "Why's she looking like that?" The mustached officer swallowed, suddenly aware of his own heartbeat. Kesha exhaled. The kind of breath someone takes right before dropping a verdict. "Badge 416. Falsified 2 reports last May," she murmured softly. The tall officer's face twitched, rattled. She turned her head slightly, voice barely above a whisper. "Badge 530. Excessive force complaint from a 17-year-old boy." Settled quietly. Phone's recording caught every syllable. Neighbors leaned in. The rookie took a step back, shoes scraping stone. "How? How do you know that?" Kesha's answer? A slow, patient blink. I read everything. The tall one grabbed her shoulder, voice cracking. You don't know a damn thing about us. She looked him dead in the eye. Badge 298. Suspended 2 years ago. Domestic complaint. Evidence lost. Gasps rippled across the steps. Someone whispered, "My God, she knows." Officers froze, like hunters suddenly realizing the deer wasn't running, because it was a lion. Kesha turned her cheek away from the wall, voice level, unshaken. "You're wondering why I'm calm?" Silence swallowed the courtyard. "It's simple," she continued. "This isn't humiliation. It's evidence." The rookie's taser hand trembled. "This lady's crazy," he stammered. "She's bluffing." Kesha raised her cuffed hands an inch, enough to let steel glint under the morning sun. "If I were bluffing," she whispered, "you'd uncuff me." No one moved. No one breathed. A gust of wind swept scattered documents across the stairs like confetti. Names, dates, signatures, dancing around their boots like ghosts. She locked eyes with each man, one by one, letting silence do what shouting never could. "You think a slap shames me?" she asked, voice low, calm, terrifying. "It only documents you." A tremor ran through the group. Phone cameras zoomed in. The tall officer's bravado cracked, jaw ticking, throat bobbing. "Why ain't she scared?" Someone mumbled behind him, because fear was their currency, and she refused to spend a dime. Kesha's voice went softer still. A judge's control wrapped in velvet. "I've seen men like you before, loud in the hallway, silent at the bench." The mustached officer finally stepped back. "What are you?" Her answer cut cleaner than any gavel. "Your accountability." The courthouse doors opened from inside. Bailiff shouting, "Judge Williams, court is waiting." Every head snapped toward the voice. Every badge turned pale. And on those courthouse steps, under morning sunlight, a single truth settled like dust. They should have been terrified the moment she didn't scream. Roll call echoed through the chamber. Deep voices bouncing off oak walls and marble floors. Defense present. Prosecution present. Bailiff present. But that last line, "presiding judge, absent," made the room shift in its seats. Whispers rolled like distant thunder. "Where is she?" "Judge Williams ain't ever late." "Something feels off." Up on the bench, the clerk tapped her pen, eyes flicking to the clock. Outside, the hallway buzzed. Nervous footsteps, frantic murmurs. Then, the courtroom doors slammed open. Every head snapped back. There she stood, Kesha Williams, civilian suit rumpled, cheeks still blossoming purple, wrists marked by fresh cuff bruises, but her chin? High. A bailiff hurried ahead, voice tight, trying not to shake. "All rise for the honorable judge, Kesha Williams." The officers from the steps, the ones who laughed, sat in the gallery now, called in to testify later for another case. Their faces went snow white. The rookie's mouth hung open like a loose hinge. The tall one's lip quivered, sweat glazing his brow. Metal handcuffs, the same pair, dangled in Kesha's hand like jewelry. She set them on the bench. Clink. Silence crawled up every spine. "Ma'am," the mustached officer tried. She held up a finger. Quiet. Her heels clicked as she crossed behind the bench, each step measured, surgical. The courtroom obeyed like a congregation. Finally, she settled into her chair. gavel resting beneath her palm, eyes sweeping the room. Slow, controlled, dangerous. "Roll call is complete," she said calmly. "Except for one correction." She pointed at the cluster of trembling uniforms. "You gentlemen are not here as officers today. A beat. You are here as defendants." Gasps rippled. Phones surfaced. The rookie stammered, We didn't know. We thought—" Her eyebrow lifted. "Barely. You thought what? That every black woman with a briefcase is trespassing?" He wilted. The tall one tried to speak, voice dry. "We didn't recognize you, Your Honor." Her stare sharpened. "That," she said softly, "is exactly the problem." The clerk swallowed, then read the next docket number. The officers' names, the very misconduct she whispered on the steps. Each syllable hammered nails into the silence. A juror whispered, "Lord, have mercy." Kesha tapped the gavel. Once. "Let the record reflect," she declared. "The same hands that slapped me outside will answer to the law inside." The tall officer sagged in his seat. I'm sorry," he whispered. She didn't blink. "Save it for sentencing." 6 decades of courtroom etiquette in the audience leaned forward, hungry, horrified, cheering in their hearts, because justice moves slow. But when it arrives, it remembers everything. "Bring me their disciplinary files," Judge Kesha Williams said, voice calm as a winter road. But her eyes? Razor sharp. The clerk hesitated. "Your Honor, those are sealed." Kesha didn't blink. "Unseal them! Now!" A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Old-timers leaned forward, lips tight, like they'd smelled this storm years ago. The bailiff returned moments later, wheeling a gray steel cabinet. Dents, scratches, dust older than some rookies in the room. A long silver lock clung to the handle like a secret clutching its chest. The officers in the gallery stiffened. "Your Honor, that drawer ain't been opened in decades," the clerk whispered. Kesha's jaw set. "Then today's its last day shut," keys rattled. Metal scraped, and with a groaning sigh, the drawer slid open. Papers erupted like ghosts escaping a tomb. Folders yellowed on the edges. Reports stamped closed, insufficient evidence. Dozens, then hundreds. Crowd gasped. "Lord," an old veteran whispered, knuckles white on his cane. She picked the first file, reading aloud. A woman bruised on her porch. Officers never disciplined. Second file. Teenage boy slammed during a traffic stop. Case dismissed. Third. Hispanic father tased while holding groceries. Different victims. Same handwriting in the margin. No witnesses. Drop. Kesha's voice dropped to a gravelly whisper. How many complaints? Shoved into this grave? The tall officer swallowed hard, Adam's apple jumping like a guilty heart. We followed procedure. She slapped the folder on the bench. Procedure? The word echoed like a gavel strike in thunder. From the back, a defense lawyer rose, voice trembling. Your Honor, the city's insurance paid settlements quietly. Attorneys were encouraged not to push. Encouraged, she repeated, rolling the word slow. Poisonous. You mean bought, whispers darted across the room like frightened birds. A retired schoolteacher spoke up, voice cracking. My grandson filed one of those reports. They told him it didn't matter. Heads turned. The gallery swelled with decades of swallowed pain. Kesha thumbed deeper, eyes narrowing, every signature approving those closures. Chief Landon Briggs. Same chief who laughed at citizens' complaints. Same chief who promised investigation and delivered silence. Clerk, she said softly, dangerously. Enter these into record as evidence of systemic neglect. The mustached officer, face now gray, stood suddenly. Judge, please. We were told to send complaints to that drawer. He ordered it. Who ordered it? She asked. His voice broke. Chief Briggs. The courtroom erupted. A boiling mix of outrage, vindication, fear. Kesha raised her gavel. Silence shuttered the room. Justice isn't paperwork, she said, voice low enough to make bones shiver. It's accountability. Older spectators nodded slow, tired, but hopeful. She stacked the files neatly. A mountain of ignored cries. How long has abuse been hiding here? She murmured. Then, she lifted the top folder like a torch. Not one more report goes into a drawer. From now on, they come to me. The officers stared at the paperwork. Suddenly, not paper at all, but chains, because truth, once pulled from hiding, never goes back quietly. The courtroom smelled of coffee and tension, paper stacked like armor on the judge's bench. Judge Kesha Williams leaned back slightly, gavel poised, eyes scanning the gallery. The officers were sweating, rookie and veteran alike, like men caught in a summer sun with no shade. Officer 416, she said, calm, precise. Explain why the complaint from May was closed without investigation. The tall one, thick neck, shallow breathing, opened his mouth, then swallowed. Standard protocol. Ma'am, he stammered. Kesha's eyes didn't move. Protocol, she repeated. Tell the truth. Did anyone instruct you to close that file? He glanced at the others. Heads shook subtly. A silent code they'd followed for decades. Yes, Your Honor. Chief Briggs, he told us to dismiss it quietly, the tall one whispered. Murmurs rustled through the courtroom. Spectators leaned forward. Even the bailiffs in the back shifted. Officer 530, she said. Your testimony on the record, please. He wiped sweat from his brow, voice trembling. I filed a report saying the officer used excessive force, but I was told to withdraw it. They said the chief would handle it. I didn't want trouble. Kesha's gaze sharpened. Trouble? You mean accountability? The rookie finally spoke, voice cracking. We followed orders. We didn't know it was illegal. Orders? Kesha's lips twitched. Just enough. Which orders? From whom? The three officers exchanged rapid, guilty glances. Officer 416 swallowed. It was Chief Briggs. He said, don't let anyone challenge us. Ever. Kesha tapped the gavel lightly. Clink. The room quieted like a snapped wire. And the body cam footage of the courthouse incident? She pressed. Explain the slap, the racial slur, the shove against me? Silence. The mustached officer stammered. We thought she was someone else, a civilian. Wrong answer, Kesha said coldly. You assaulted a judge. That is not someone else. That is the law itself. And the law does not tolerate ignorance. The sweat on their foreheads glistened under the fluorescent lights. Each man realized the truth. Their protection, the blue wall, had cracks. And those cracks were widening fast. Officer 5-3 Nero's hands shook. I didn't want it to come out. I just followed orders. You didn't want what to come out? Kesha's voice sliced through the courtroom like a scalpel. That a system you swore to protect is corrupt? That files disappear? That complaints are buried for profit and cover-ups? She paused, eyes locking on each one, cold and steady. Who ordered those reports to disappear? The tall officer finally admitted, voice barely above a whisper, "Chief Briggs and his counsel, they funded the settlements themselves, bribed the attorneys, silenced the witnesses." Gasps erupted. The crowd stirred. Phones tilted upward. Some older spectators shook their heads, muttering under breath. Kesha's gavel dropped hard. Every hand that touched those files, every mouth that kept silent, is accountable, and I will see that it reaches the top. The officers' faces went pale. The rookies' hands quivered. They had thought the blue wall was untouchable, but the wall had just cracked, and this judge? She was standing right in the fissure, ready to tear it down completely. The courtroom smelled of coffee and tension. Papers stacked like armor on the judge's bench. Judge Kesha Williams leaned back slightly, gavel poised, eyes scanning the gallery. The officers were sweating, rookie and veteran alike, like men caught in a summer sun with no shade. "Officer 416, she said, calm, precise. "Explain why the complaint from May was closed without investigation." The tall one, thick neck, shallow breathing, opened his mouth, then swallowed. Standard protocol." "Ma'am," he stammered. Kesha's eyes didn't move. "Protocol," she repeated. "Tell the truth. Did anyone instruct you to close that file?" He glanced at the others. Heads shook subtly. A silent code they'd followed for decades. "Yes, Your Honor. Chief Briggs, he told us to dismiss it quietly," the tall one whispered. Murmurs rustled through the courtroom. Spectators leaned forward. Even the bailiffs in the back shifted. "Officer 530, she said. "Your testimony on the record, please." He wiped sweat from his brow, voice trembling. I filed a report saying the officer used excessive force, but I was told to withdraw it. They said the chief would handle it. I didn't want trouble." Kesha's gaze sharpened. "Trouble? You mean accountability?" The rookie finally spoke, voice cracking. We followed orders. We didn't know it was illegal." "Orders?" Kesha's lips twitched. "Just enough." "Which orders? From whom?" The three officers exchanged rapid, guilty glances. Officer 416 swallowed. "It was Chief Briggs. He said, don't let anyone challenge us. Ever." Kesha tapped the gavel lightly. Clink. The room quieted like a snapped wire. "And the body cam footage of the courthouse incident?" she pressed. "Explain the slap, the racial slur, the shove against me?" "Silence," the mustached officer stammered. We thought she was someone else, a civilian." "Wrong answer," Kesha said coldly. "You assaulted a judge. That is not someone else. That is the law itself. And the law does not tolerate ignorance." The sweat on their foreheads glistened under the fluorescent lights. Each man realized the truth. Their protection, the blue wall, had cracks, and those cracks were widening fast. Officer 5-3 Nero's hands shook. I didn't want it to come out. I just followed orders." "You didn't want what to come out?" Kesha's voice sliced through the courtroom like a scalpel. "That a system you swore to protect is corrupt? That files disappear? That complaints are buried for profit and cover-ups?" She paused, eyes locking on each one, cold and steady. "Who ordered those reports to disappear?" The tall officer finally admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "Chief Briggs and his counsel, they funded the settlements themselves, bribed the attorneys, silenced the witnesses." Gasps erupted. The crowd stirred. Phones tilted upward. Some older spectators shook their heads, muttering under breath. Kesha's gavel dropped hard. Bang! Every hand that touched those files, every mouth that kept silent, is accountable, and I will see that it reaches the top. The officers' faces went pale. The rookies' hands quivered. They had thought the blue wall was untouchable, but the wall had just cracked, and this judge, she was standing right in the fissure, ready to tear it down completely. The courtroom held its breath. The old oak benches creaked under the weight of spectators who had waited decades to see justice move. Slow, deliberate, and finally unstoppable. Judge Kesha Williams rose from her chair. The bruises on her face had faded to purple shadows, but her presence, unbroken, commanding, iron-willed. She scanned the gallery, locking eyes with every officer who had humiliated her, humiliated the law, humiliated every citizen who had trusted the system. "Perjury," she began, voice steady as iron. Clink of her gavel punctuated each word. Assault, harassment, criminal misconduct. The officers shifted in their seats, sweat forming beads on their foreheads. Each accusation landed like a hammer on their pride. Their badges, once shields, now felt like lead chains around their necks. The tall officer, who had shoved her face into stone, lowered his gaze. He realized too late that arrogance and ignorance had no protection here. The mustached officer's hands trembled. The rookie, wide-eyed, gripped the edge of the bench. None of them had expected this. Not from her. Not now. Kesha paused, letting the weight of silence settle over the courtroom. Phones recorded every twitch, every shallow breath, every guilty glance. The crowd leaned forward, leaning in to witness history. Furthermore, her voice cut through the murmurs, slicing the air. One officer's donor list ties direct payments to the police chief's family charity. Funds meant to support the community were diverted, to silence complaints, to protect corruption. Gasps rose like a tide. Even seasoned lawyers and retired officers exchanged horrified looks. Kesha stepped down from the bench. Her heels clicked against the marble, precise, deliberate. Every step reverberated, a drumbeat of accountability. She faced the officers squarely, calm, controlled. You thought the law would bend for you. You thought your badges would shield you from scrutiny. You were wrong. Every lie, every shove, every cover-up. It ends today. The room went quiet. Then came the gavel's echo. Bang! The dominoes began to fall. Reports, files, witness statements. Each piece of evidence stacked against them with surgical precision. Their careers, reputations, and lies crumbled like paper in fire. Spectators whispered, some teary, some shaking with disbelief. Justice had finally found its voice, in the bruised but unbroken woman they had tried to humiliate. Kesha's eyes swept the room once more, resting briefly on the donor list. Her lips curled into a small, controlled smile. The corruption runs deep, she admitted, but it does not run free. Every hand that aided it, every mouth that kept it silent, will answer. She raised the gavel once more, slower this time, letting her final words sink into every corner of the chamber. Let this court record, reflect, that the law belongs to the people, and no badge, no title, and no money will ever make it otherwise. The officers slumped, faces pale, dignity shredded, their hierarchy shattered. Some wept quietly, others simply stared, unable to process the collapse of the world they thought they controlled. Outside, the spectators murmured praise and relief. For the first time in years, justice had not just spoken, it had acted. And Judge Kesha Williams? She stood tall, bruises fading but power blazing, a living testament that authority is meaningless without accountability. And courage always finds its way. The courtroom doors closed. The gavel rested. The law had won. The corruption had fallen. But everyone watching knew this wasn't just an ending. It was a warning. No one stands above justice.